Hello everyone, welcome back. So jumping right in again, or well, bit of a recap. What is it that we're doing here? Well, I'm writing a programming language in Rust. What's the language? So currently I'm working on a research basis. It's a C style language called C, or called Seed in C style syntax, and it's going to be used as a base for researching different programming language ideas and mixing matching different concepts and things like that. And that'll be used as a basis for another language that I'm hoping to develop afterwards called Ash, which is aiming to be a Bash alternative, keeping some of the ergonomics of Bash while adding in some of the more easy to use features that were used from a lot of, I guess, again, C style languages. And where am I with that? So at the moment, I'm building up the base features for the C language, and we're kind of nearing, I would say, 70% completion on that. And the tools that I'm using at the moment are Mosh to connect to my development server. I'm using Tmux to then split that connection into different sessions that I use for different projects and different views of the same project. I use Vim for the actual development, and then I use ENTR in a Tmux pane to actually rerun the project whenever I make changes. So today I'm continuing on from the work yesterday, where I had gotten most of the work done on what I'm calling range indexes. So I've added support for indexing, so indexing things like strings, lists, and maybe the terminology isn't as relevant. I guess you could still call it indexing for objects or maps as well. So looking up values by keys instead of integer indexes. And so that feature is more or less done. So I have a few bits of housework or housekeeping, I guess, rather than housework to get done. So I need to bump a couple of the copyright notices for whatever reason, and just out of habit, I guess, more than anything. And I also want to double check the terminology that I'm using across the different source files, just to make sure that I'm using terminology consistently, because I think yesterday I noticed in some place I was calling, so I've decided in the meantime to focus on the terminology a range index. And so I might have some places in the code where I'm calling it an index range, so I want to swap that around just to be consistent. And I've also, in the back of my mind for later, so I have planned, and I've developed this previously, a feature which is just a regular range, so similar that you'd find in Rust and lots of languages really, where it will give you back a list of integers from 1 to a maximum. And so I had called those ranges in the past. I'm kind of thinking that I might call those sequences instead, even though now that I think of it, lots of languages use the term range. So maybe I'd be better off just keeping the terminology there. And in the case of, I really wanted to change it to distinguish it from range indexes, but I guess we'll just keep the terminology as is, because as I say it out loud, maybe it makes more sense to be consistent with terminology. I mean, one of the reasons I'm writing a C style language as opposed to using some bespoke syntax or a Lisp like syntax or something like that is to reap the benefits of familiarity. And so I feel like keeping that familiar terminology from other languages with regards to range makes sense in that case. So I'm going to go to source eval bind, bump the version there. and val error and source of val mod, and there are going to be plenty of errors in the pane on the right as well, because I've commented out a big chunk of the parser in order to get the compile times kind of quicker. And something I was thinking as well is I might keep, so one thing that I was doing yesterday, we can see here I've commented out lots of sections of the parser to get a bit more speed out of the compilation process. However, I'll have to uncomment and recomment that every time I want to apply that again. I'll probably want to apply this for most of the features that I'm adding, just because the compile time duration has gotten so long at this point. And so what I might do with that is stash that change and then see if I can unstash it every time that I want to apply it. I could also handle it as a patch. I don't really have much experience with using git patch. Let me see how complicated that might be. I think you create a patch file. So you can save a diff into a patch file and then git apply file patch. Okay, so that's actually simpler than what I was thinking I might have to do, because I was thinking of messing around with the stage. But in that case, let's see. First of all, I will I'll save some of my changes that I don't want to be in the diff first. So I do want that to be in, whoops, no, I've gone off to a poor start. So I'm going to, let's see, I want to add the thing, kind of remove the things that I don't want to be in the diff. So I want to remove that. Oh no. So I want to remove that. I don't want to remove those. I want to split that, but I don't think I'll be able to. So maybe what I'll do is actually just remove manually the things that I'm going to comment out next time. And I'll git diff the parser just to make sure. Yeah. And so if I do git diff and I save that to parser comments dot patch, was it saying? Not that it matters too much since it's not going to be committed anywhere. And so if I were to just to test that out, if I were to do git stash and then git apply parser comments Yeah, and that's the change that I wanted. So I'll revert that. I'll get back my changes, and I'll undo the changes here. I'll overwrite the newest version that was restored, and we should be good to go then. And so the last thing I want to do before there's a couple of things, I guess. Oh, I needed to actually add tests for this as well. So what I might do is I'll rerun the compiler with just the new tests. So I'll probably need to have some special names for the tests I'm going to run. So do I have it in operations? Oh, I have a specific indexing file. So I'll only run tests in indexing. So we'll go 1 to 4, and I think that's inclusive. So it would be 0 to 5 would be the range. So B, C, D, E. No start. End, and finally we will have, let's see, and no bounds. So let's try this. And yeah, I'll need to update main to have the newly changed errors. And actually I'll need to add error tests as well. So I'm going to keep a list of things that I need to do in this commit. So error tests, functionality tests, update features .test and features.md. And I've bumped the cargo version, and I've bumped the copyright notices. So let's see. So I guess I've commented out too much functionality. So I guess I'll have to go ahead and uncomment the functional. I have to be careful here. The functional parts of the parser. So don't drop that. In fact, I'm going to go through it manually so that I'm not in danger of discarding something useful. Now, anything that I've only added a small few lines of actually functional code, so I wouldn't be losing much, but it's still frustrating when you lose code. So let's do it that way, and we'll go back to checking the new error wrapping. So convert index isn't an error we're handling. Eval source expression. Eval I think some of these are getting removed actually. I'll just double check, so it'll be in source eval mod eval string end index. Okay, so that's still there. Okay, eval string and is there still yeah, that still exists as well. So we'll have start index, end index, and index range, but that will need to have the name updated as well. String range index failed. And I'll call that eval as well. String index range. String range index. So we have source expression, and do we have eval index to I64? We don't yet, I don't think. Okay, so let's see. I'm guessing that most of these errors are just going to be off by ones. So string range index. I expected ABCD, but I got ABCDE. Does that make sense? String range index. So if I had, so I need to nearly piece it together myself manually here. I always forget how these things are defined. So if I go three, four, five, six. Okay, so if I were to give the range 0, 6, that would give the whole thing. And in fact, that would be a useful test as well. 0.6, and so if I want BCDE, I'd need 1.5, and same down there. So that should then work. Now it's a bit frustrating. I'm not quite sure why the whole thing compiles when I update a test. Could it be because I generate the tests in the build script and that results in the compile needing to rebuild? I'm not really sure, but yeah, like a 20-second build time is a bit cumbersome. But anyway, so I need to rename some functions as well for consistency. I'll just satisfy the comment checker for the moment. So I've got my functionality tests. I need to add in some error tests. Those to actually just be -1 because I've added support for negative numbers now. Get the interpreter to tell me what the errors are there. So what are the places where I'm using the range index terminology as well, actually? So first of all, the AST. Okay, I forgot to run all the tests. index range will need to change to range index. That's happening a bit more often as well. I wonder, is there like a sub process that's being kicked off when I run a compile that's running for longer than the compilation itself? Not sure. Anyway, I'll go back to here. I think I've caught all index range terminology and unwrapped all the failed errors, but let's just double check. So I'll need to add error checks for those as well. Well, just the value not range indexable. And we'll have a value not range indexable. Oh, in bind. I hadn't covered that. Whoops. Range index. So that should be all the error tests as well. Whoops. Let's see. Yeah, so that was a correction of the wrap error, or the wrapping error. Simplified some code there. That's the new code. I wonder, should I create a specific PR just for that simplification, for that abstraction, so that I can simplify the current PR. Or it's only a one-off commit, not a PR, so probably doesn't make too much of a difference. So that's the functionality tests. Those are the error tests. Yeah, there are a lot of changes, but there's nothing, it's not a huge commit either, so it should be alright. So let's see, I think most of these are just errors to do with the formatting of the error message. So let's see, add string range end. That's... Oh yeah, I haven't actually added support for list indexing. So I better change that for the moment, and that error message in the meantime is going to be incorrect, but I think that will be fine for the moment. since I'm going to be adding range indexes on lists in the next commit. So features dot test, and usually this is just a copy of some of the functionality from one of the other tests. So let's see. Grab that. Got the order of those wrong. I'd say that'll come out in Oh, no. What have I done? I've done something else wrong here. I've left out a semicolon. And this should go there. And I have to update the error tests. So let's see. And let's see the runtime errors. Negative string range end. Oh, and it's the position is wrong. Or it's actually letting us know what position the erroneous character is in. So that's 17. And that's probably going to need to be updated as well, I'm guessing. Negative list index. Okay, let's see. I think that's more or less all the tasks I needed to do. It's funny how quickly the rest of the features progressed, and then out of nowhere this feature just seemed to take a little bit longer for whatever reason. I guess the compile time duration wasn't helping things, but still I wouldn't have thought it'd have that big of an impact. Print the wrong number there. Is that the only one? Bad string range. Oops, bad string range start. And bad string range end. Oops. Okay, yeah. But I need to add in position information. So let's see. I don't get the information there. So I'll need to get the What's my best way of adding the position information in here? This is gonna be messy, but I don't really see a better way of handling it at the moment. Yeah, I guess I'll have to do something like this. Really not happy with how ugly this is getting, but I'll have to shorten these names as well. So range index failed. Realistically, I shouldn't be using the new location error here. I should be using error and then error at location. And line. And I'll get the error information from the expression rather than so from the or no, I think I can use the location error. It's going to give it's going to give the location of the start of the entire expression, which isn't going to be as nice. So it's going to, again, going back here, it's going to be the likes of 1 1 again, but the code is getting so messy around here that I'm reluctant, and I don't have a good yeah, I'll add it to do comment. Realistically, I should be checking exactly which part of the out of bounds access, whether the out of bounds access is being caused from by the start index or the end index, and then returning the location of that as appropriate. But that it's not that that's a lot of work, but it's maybe a bit more work than I want to put into this specific commit, and wouldn't really have a ton of benefit at the moment anyway in the short term. So I'm going to add a to do comment here. so that would be source. So I think that's more or less what I want. Wonder, is there an easy way of adding that context to a result? So at the moment, I'm adding this context to a result. So if I have a result of this form where error is my error type, I can use this snafu extension for the result type to decorate the error. I should be able to create some kind of, well, first of all, it probably wouldn't be too difficult. I'd probably be able to actually use @lock line call to decorate that by default. Is there a way I can simplify that, I wonder? Like, could I write my own result extension which also takes the line and column? Quite possibly. It's something to think about anyway. I'm not going to dive into that at the moment, but it could simplify, well, simplify maybe not, but it could at least make more succinct a couple of places. Well, this would be the main place where it would be applied, where it would actually potentially save code. But yeah, there are a couple of places where I define this new location error. And it might be possible to get around having to define that helper function. Yeah, it's something to have a think about anyway. I'm not going to try and get that into today's session anyway. So that has to be boxed. Yeah, so I've said I'm not going to do it in today's session, but I'm clearly trying to figure out how can I wrangle it into today's session. Oh, I shouldn't. But it's so tantalizing. Let's see, I think I'm on the verge of adding this functionality anyway. Whoops, no, didn't want to add that. And I think I might update one of the error messages. Have I any error tests for that? Oh, yeah, those tests should be. Yeah, and that should be range 5.3. So bad string range start. And that will be range 5.3 is outside the string bounds. And same for that. Range 0.5 is outside the string bounds. Okay, so in this one, negative string index. I'm getting I should be getting string index can't be negative, but I'm getting list index can't be negative. Am I reusing an error somewhere? Ah, yes. So I'm gonna have to remove that and say and make that generic. Let's try that. So I have a line length error, yep. So I need to change the variable names here, I think. Oh, and it's still not even short enough. So let's see. How many characters do I need to remove? 7 characters. Such a self-imposed problem. And this should be range index instead of index range. Okay, I guess I'll just call it start val and end val. Still waiting for that compilation to finish. Okay. So we know the commit is alright. In theory, anyway. And that will be a cargo patch bump. And I'll reboot that so that it'll also bump the cargo lock. Okay, and now going back to the thing that I said I wouldn't do, or at least wouldn't spend much more time on today. So if I wanted to add the location information, so one thing that's there as well is there's, in general, when I'm adding location information, do I usually have an expression that I take the line and column from? So if I did that, here, and I did something like, oops, yeah, I think I'll leave that for the moment. Oh. I'll add that in the next commit. So let's see if I can go ahead and get the range for list done as well. How has my simplification ended up so much longer than the approach with arguably more duplication? Not sure. That's probably why I wrote it that way originally. Anyway. Actually, I can probably extract those. And save a little bit of space. It does mean that the check for the value type happens after. So we could evaluate the actual range expressions first and then find out afterwards that they're not going to be used because the value it's being applied to doesn't make sense. But I think that's a reasonable trade-off. And now that that's made a little simpler, before I start adding list items, I think the OKV still makes a bit more sense, unfortunately, because otherwise there'll just be too many exit points, I think, and it'll get a little tricky to track the flow of control, I think. Yeah, I think that's more or less all I need for the list part of this functionality. Now I'll need to update the errors because some of them have been made generic. Okay, so that should be most of the errors handled. Get list range index doesn't exist. Oh, I just haven't saved this file in a while. Cool, and while I'm waiting for that, I should start adding some tests. So, whoop. Oh, that's gonna be wrong. Or no, that's correct. Okay, let's try that, and I want the runtime errors again, basically the same as the string ones. Okay, so those didn't pass. So which ones failed? No end. Should have had 2 there. Okay. And what was this one? So no start. Similar issue. So that would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. positions are needing updating. So that's 5, that will be 6. And those are fine. And I think those should all be done now. So if we did 2 to 4, that would be 3 and 4. Cool, I think that's all that's needed for there. Oh, I need to bump the cargo stuff. Is this a new feature? I guess so. Add support for range indexing on lists. And hopefully all the tests pass, and if they do, then I will push that up. index ranges done, and having taken a lot longer than expected. Because I was making pretty good progress with the rest of the features. I mean, I was getting 2 or 3 of them wrapped up in a single session, whereas this took 2 sessions to finish one feature. So, and then range will be the next thing I'll work on, and this will be a good chunk of work. This is deceptive, I think, because there are a lot of different things need to be handled in assignments. In fact, I can go through them now just to document them for myself, so that's not such a big surprise when I actually go through them. So we can do assignments on list destructuring, indexing, range index, object, which is also destructuring, not calls, there'll also be spread and unspread. Those will be handled. Not sure when they'll be handled exactly, but... And okay, so there actually aren't too many things to handle with assignments. Maybe the object shorthand, i.e. proc access. Cool, and let's take a quick look at range, see if we can squeeze in another feature today. Let's see. Parser, this will need a new Lexer token for dot dot. That's the Lexer stuff done. Now I just need to add in the range operator. So I want this, so I'm not going to put it in the same place as the and or, I think, but I do want it to be fairly loosely binding. Yeah, it's not going to... Oh, hi, welcome. So, the only problem with this is I'm using a ladder pop macro to generate or to handle this production, and that's allowed me to simplify this tier of this precedence tier from the operator symbol to the operation that it performs. So it's not going to be so easy to squeeze the support for range in there. So this is the macro that handles tiers. I'd want to have something in here could possibly I wonder, yeah, would it be possible to do something? I'll ignore the naming for now. Oops. And then I could do something like that. And I wonder why I have the precedence 2, expression precedence 2 on the right hand side, because in most other matches or clauses I have it on the left hand side, I think. Oh no, I don't. Well, it's kind of different. Let me see. Down here. I am slightly worried that I've confused the recursion around here, because I don't always fully follow the ordering of things and how they're meant to work. So sometimes I'm just following patterns. So in this case, where else could I put it? Put it down there. Yeah, I think I'll just leave it out of that for the moment. Or I could unroll the macro entirely so that I can add more stuff at that precedence level. I mean, that's also an option. Maybe I'll do that. Even unrolling 2 expressions is a bit messy. Let's just double check what that would look like. So it would be precedence 1, raw expression, and I'll grab that. So we'd have left, this would expand to expression precedence 1. And consistency, I'll remove the spaces there. Operation in this case is expression operation 1. And next here is expression precedence 2. And then I would have so if I'm reading the above macro correctly as well, I wonder if I can actually simplify. So first of all, I'll get rid of this error for dot dot by actually handling it. And I'll update the parser to I'll comment out the new code from the parser, because I might be able to quote unquote simplify part of it by just doing this if I have read the macro expansion correctly, even though this only applies to one of those handlers, so not a huge saving, but yeah, in terms of, so I think it is Vim, but yeah, I'm using the default color scheme, partly because I'm SSHing into so the development environment that I'm using is a remote server. So if I think if I was using iTerm locally, it would support all these fancy colors, but because it's running remotely, I've had trouble in the past with getting nice colors to work with Vim when it's running remotely and the likes. And also it's gotten to the point, I think I've said this in other streams as well, it's gotten to the point where at this stage I try to do as little configuration of my environment as possible. Yeah, that kind of a thing. It's like, as long as it's functional, like, because sometimes I'll even work without syntax highlighting at all. It's a total pain, but sometimes it's just like I just don't have the mental fortitude to configure it and get it working. So yeah, you'll see a lot of defaults in my development environment in general. I tend to not configure things very often. I have less and less time for just mental time really for configuring things these days. And so it looks like that change actually, that simplification actually took. So I'm going to actually just commit that as a little standalone change. Okay, so just a little small improvement there. So in terms of this, so that will allow me to put in and saying down here, I would put that there. So by unrolling this macro, it'll allow me to add the range handler there. And that is where I want it in general in terms of the precedence, because it means that I can do something like, for example, 1 plus, or I don't know, 0 to x plus 1, and it'll bind like that. So I think in general I want the range operation to be, or the operator to be, very loosely binding. And that's probably the simplest way of doing that, is it? Unless I just add in a new tier between 1 and 2. The connection's getting very choppy again. Hopefully I can get some more stable internet this year. I think there's going to be an actual landline coming to the place sometime this year, but focusing back on this, if I create a new precedence 2, and then I bump all of these, and that too. Let's try that. And it might be a relatively simple solution to the problem. Oh yeah, I counted out precedence 1. Ooh, maybe not. But this could be to do with what oh, that should probably be precedence 3 now, because this had been in the precedence level 1, and it also had been on the left hand side previously, and so maybe that's why I had it there before. So there's no, still causing issue. I would have expected that to work now. expected it to work with the... Oh, here the expression is on the left-hand side. So I have precedence 2, precedence 3 at the end. Okay, so let's see if we can scroll up through this massive Lallerpop error that it's given us and see, can we get an example? No, it's run out of buffer space. Maybe if I output the error to a file just for the moment. So that's probably gonna go, oh, so I don't want that to be entr'd. So I'll go doc run in build env just check and put that out to the log file. I wonder if I went back to this approach. Well, I'll just leave things the way they are first. And let's see what's in that log file. So, problem arises after this case. So, is there a simple way of reading this? So if we had an expression followed by dot dot followed by a precedence level 1 expression and there was an and there, oh, seems to be to do with the fact that it's nearly like it's competing with the ampersands for how tightly they're binding, but I don't know why those are coming into the equation, because ampersand should always win. I mean, it should always be the most loosely binding, so any expression that happens after should be binding to the range operator. So if we have a precedence 1 operation, so let's see, can we do a running example here? So if we have an expression like 1, so that's precedence level 3 and above, followed by ... followed by true and false. Even though from an evaluation perspective that would be invalid, but from a parsing perspective that's a valid parse tree or a valid syntax tree, or syntax tree candidate, I suppose you'd call it. So so it's saying if we have that, and at that point if the next token is an AND, the parser could proceed in 2 ways. Let's see. So it could execute the production here, which would consume this and produce an expression precedence 1, which is what I'd expect. Yeah, so that's what's being created there. So is that what I'd expect? So it's taking, so this would be the ampersand in this case. Yeah, that's what I'd expect, because this would be most loosely binding, and so everything in this would be handled kind of separately. Alternatively, it could shift the ampersand and later use it to construct this. Might then yield a parse tree like this. I wonder if I'm getting a bit confused, because is Lallerpop unrolling the macro in this description, or is this ampersand? No, it's talking about the same ampersand. So it could later use it to basically it can what's it called, consume it or shift it. And if it shifts it, I find it difficult to see the difference. Okay, wait, sorry, I'm misunderstanding. So basically, instead of it being, so one approach is that everything on the left could be bound in this way. Whoops, what am I doing? So if we had whatever on the right hand side, then it could be bound in that way. Or it could be bound in this way, I think is how I'm reading it. But I would have said that that's handled by the ordering of the productions and the precedence between them. I mean, I kind of find it difficult to see how that's different to, for example, that. Like, I think it's the same problem, and it's just that the parser gets beyond it by nature of the associativity and precedence that's encoded into the different tiers of the parser. So let me go back here. Have I just done something very silly that I haven't taken into account, or what's going on? Okay, well, I'm going to go back and fire up the repeated build, and for the moment I'm going to comment this out and see what happens if I manually unroll the macro and add my expression in here instead. And I need this to be expression 3, I think. No definition for expression are level 2, so I'll change that to level 3. And that should be expression 1. So that seems to be all right. Oh, so same issue for whatever reason. So if I were to not unroll it, but instead handle the operations manually, like so. need to change those if I'm still getting a conflict. Yeah, so I'm still getting a conflict there. So what if I change those? It was looking kind of hopeful there for a second. Okay, so what if I change those to precedence 3, and in the old version of the code I have the expression on the left hand side. At this point I'm just playing around to get something working, because I'm not fully sure what the problem is. So if I start from a working solution and try and converge on the working solution from two different directions. It's thinking about it. Okay, so I changed this to expression or to precedence 3. So that seem to be one of the things that rectified it. I wonder if I can. So what else did I try? I tried swapping those around and unrolling some of those bits. So let's try. First of all, let's try swapping these around. And see, does that make any difference? Yeah, for whatever reason, these are the features that are taking a lot of time. And I wouldn't have said there was anything particularly special about them. I mean, this new operation, I'm adding it in a somewhat new way, but I wouldn't have expected there to be anything particularly strange about what I'm doing, or it's not a particularly unique operation. I mean, it's similar to any other infix operator, I would have said, but as ever. So let's go back to this and roll that up again. Like, it's funny, the reason I'd expression precedence 1 above is because I thought I could do that with the likes of these. So I'm at precedence level 5 and I'm defining the recursion again on expression on precedence 5, but maybe that's because these operations aren't just infix operations, they're actually bracketed, so they have a start and an end, whereas with the infix operators that's not the case. So maybe that's where the issue is coming from. And so I wonder, can I roll this up again and just change my new precedence level and change that to 3. And if I do that, what will happen? Okay, so it didn't like that anyway. But I also had it slightly different. I don't think this would make a difference though. Yeah, that didn't make a difference. So going back to this. But yeah, even above here, so there's, on the left hand of the operation, there's the current tier, and then the right hand side of it is the next tier. So realistically, I should be able to do next tier and current tier and have that work. And so that's not working, even though I feel like that's what that's saying. Or maybe it's because of the presence of this. So if I were to remove this, I wonder. Yeah, that seems to be working. So if I were to swap those around and have them look like the productions above or the match above. Taking a while to compile that version. Oh, because I actually compiled the whole project. It wasn't compiling just the parser that time. Okay, it's starting the compile now. Does it look like it's compiling? Okay, I think it is. So can I again do the same thing here by unrolling the macro? Or will I get a conflict again? Either way, I think... Oh, so thanks for the question. So Norpal still... No, there's a conflict. So interesting. It looks like I'm gonna have to unroll the macro anyway if I want to add this new feature. But with regards to Norpal, it's more or less in a, shall we say, kind of read-only archive state. So I've kept the Git commit history and things like that the way they were, but because the project as a whole was so messy, even the name was always kind of a placeholder for the most part. I've left it in more or less an open archive state. And so this language is essentially the spiritual, if not whole successor to Norpal, where I'm basically just copying over the code, but building up the code one layer at a time with tests and proper coding discipline and things like that. So this C language that I'm writing now is more or less the same language. And but with tests and things like that. And once I've gotten that to a satisfactory degree, I'll be building on the more unique features that I'm wanting to have once again. So bit of a slow progress to get back to where I was before in a way, but at least this time it'll be built up in a much more stable way, I would say, with tests and the likes. So I think if it were to become a language that other people were to start using, I think the presence of tests would be appreciated. So, but thanks very much for the question, and yeah, I hope that answers it. So, with regards to the stream today, that's an interesting... Oh, thanks very much. So that's an interesting obstacle, I guess, I've come up against now. So it looks like if I want to proceed, I can't use the approach that I'd prefer. Hang on a second. Could this work? Yeah, there are a few there at this point, but luckily I've finally caught up with uploading them to YouTube, so you can take your time. I think they're the type of video that you can probably watch at double speed as well, because I talk fairly slowly. So so good luck. And that seems to have fixed it. Okay. Nice, glad to hear it. So, and I've just noticed as well, my disk space has filled up again, so it has to, well, it doesn't have to be, but it seems like this project is the one that's eating up my disk space. However I'm doing it, it could be the multiple calls to the so I rebuild this in a Docker container more or less every time it runs, but the Docker container should just be reusing the same image. Well, it'll rebuild the image, but it should be using the cache every time. Could it be volumes, anonymous volumes that are being created? I don't know, but that's funny that the disk space is running out every time and so quickly. Yeah, the images add up fast, which is more or less specifically why with the approach I use now in my projects, I actually never copy the source code into the image, because that's one of the things that I feel results in a huge number of images being built up very fast. So what I always do is I define the build environment separately to the code essentially, and then I'll only ever volume mount the code. And so even if I'm rebuilding the image every time, it should only ever be using the cache. But the tool that I'm using is one that I wrote maybe last year, and maybe there's some leak in it or something like that that's causing the disk space to run out, because that is... Oh yeah, I used a system prune recently, and that did save up a good chunk, because I have a lot of projects using Docker containers. But yeah, it was a couple of gigs that got saved up, and already that's run out again. So that's strange that that's happened. At the very least, I'm happy that I finally overcome this conflict issue and not had to unroll the macros in order to add in this new range operator. But still, it is kind of strange that the disk space is running out. Anyway, I think that's a good place to end it for today. I'm fairly happy with getting past that specific chunk anyway, and that'll help with future additions as well, because it should be a little neater when I'm adding those as well. Because if I had to unroll this one, I'd probably have to start unrolling the other precedence levels at some point as well. So it's nice that got simplified a bit. But yeah, I'll have to dive into this disk space issue, and that might even be its own stream, is debugging the tool that I built for doing that. So we'll see. But anyway, so that could be a raw expression, but I don't have a range AST node anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But that is it for today, I think. And yeah, I think the stream was just getting choppy again. But to recap, so let me just check the Git log. So what did I get done today? So yeah, finally added support, or finished the support for range indexing, and added support for applying those to lists as well, and a little bit of refactoring. So all of those are going to get pushed now. And with that said, that is it for today. So thanks very much as always for checking out the stream and commenting. It's really nice to hear and see people being interested in these kind of things. So I enjoy discussing it as well. So thanks again, and thank you very much. Have a good evening and night, and I'll talk to you again.